first of all, thank you all for coming. And then maybe have each one of the speakers spend about 2 minutes, no more than that, to introduce themselves. And then I will start with questions.
I think the way the farming are financed in Brazil today, mainly with the trading companies through the barters, when they exchange inputs for the product, it's a result of the lack of information that the farmers have in Brazil. So most of the farms, it's a consequence, most of the farms doesn't have balance sheet audited, even worse. So most of the banks cannot see the farmers, cannot see the statements of the farmers. So in this way, the traders found an opportunity to finance some very good farmers, but they don't know how to show to the market, to the financial market. And this is a very good opportunity for them to make bigger margins than the banks. So, for example, today, Scheffer doesn't use barter since last 20 years. But when we started, and we didn't have balance sheet, we started with the traders to finance us. It was very hard. I think today it's almost maybe half of your margin stays with the trading. If you are not, you don't have good if you use them as an only source of credit, because it's not only the interest rate, but the inputs you pay is more expensive, 10%, 20%, to sell about 5% cheaper, and your interest rate is about 30% higher in terms compared with the ones who has ship like us. Have a lack of investment, lack of money to invest in many areas in Mato Grosso state, in other states too, and only with the money the farmer has is not enough to develop that. And also, if I think on the price of land, I think there's land for everybody. The lands that some Brazilian farmers can buy, even that if they were allowed, like I can buy land with some problems in title because I'm Brazilian. So I know how to solve the problem. It takes time. I have stomach for that. But the foreign investor doesn't have. So he can buy the land which is already developed. Everything is okay. So and in Brazil there are two kinds. There's the land that the papers are so good, and there are some that you have to solve. So I don't think it's a problem. I think my assets could be much better, and the price will be much better. So I think it will be more opportunities for Brazilian. And when you see the price of land in Brazil and US, and you compare the margins, for example, where I am in Sapezal city, the margins with soybean and cotton is about 1,000 US, making 2 crops per year. And when you see the price of the land there, it's about $6,000 per hectare. Here in US is a double, and the margin is not the same. It's lower when we make one crop of soybean in Iowa, for example. So there's a huge leverage of pricing of land, and I don't think it's a smart way.
I mentioned in the very beginning, back in the 70s, Brazil was considered a food insecure country. We basically imported everything that we consumed in Brazil, but coffee, sugar, and cocoa. So Brazil was known as a huge coffee, sugar exporter, but we imported meat, rice, beans, maize, and all other products from different countries. And at that time, our government understood that we had to invest in a tropical model of production, and this tropical model of production had to be based in science. So that's what we did. We didn't have a model to copy because the big players were located in the temperate regions of the world. So Brazil had to develop its own model of production. So if you look today, after 45 years, we increased the area of production in Brazil and during the last 45 years in 600%, and we only increased the production of 600%, and we only increased 50% the area. And the name of the game is technology. And once again, we didn't have a model to copy at that time. We increased the production of corn and rice in 240%, wheat in 310% during the last 4 decades, And I believe one of the most astonishing numbers is that we moved from producing 200,000 tons of poultry, and now we are producing 12 million tons of poultry. So we increased 60 times the production during the last 45 years. And once again, we did that in a sustainable way. Back in the late 80s, early 90s, we, together with the private sector, we developed a technology which is the biological nitrogen fixation. So it's a bacterium that you apply with soybean on the soil. And as we have 78% of nitrogen in the atmosphere, the bacterium traps or captures the nitrogen that is in the atmosphere. So our soybean growers, and we have around 70 million acres of soybean in Brazil, they don't need to apply one single gram of nitrogen fertilizer in Brazilian soils. So last year, and we every year we just publish our what we call our balance, our social balance. Last year, this technology, only one technology of biological nitrogen fixation, saved $6.3 billion to Brazil.
Since 2010, foreigners cannot acquire for Brazilian farmland except using, unless you have some alternatives. You could have, and it happened, some of the large producers have used joint ventures with foreign funds, in which the foreign fund acquires a minority stake in the company, and then the Brazilian company operates and produces on the farmland. So we do have alternatives, but direct ownership or full ownership at this point is not allowed. What we have seen, 2007, there was a movement from the Temer administration saying we are going to unfreeze we're going to lift the restrictions. That didn't happen. It was around March 2017. And but now we see the new administration say that we are going to look at again on this topic. There are 2 or 3 projects in the Congress to revise this this topic, but it's all still things under discussions. There's no there's no development, real development in this end.
But today, Brazil preserves 66.3% of its territory. So 66% of its territory is preserved. We do not touch, we do not grow anything on those 66%. This area is around 550 million hectares, so maybe 1 billion acres of land untouched. We cannot use that land to produce, which is equal to the surface of 48 countries in Europe. So, and inside this 66%, growers are protecting 25% of the Brazilian land inside their farms, and they're not receiving one single penny for doing that. And now we are moving to a new phase of this project, that we are making all the calculation, to see how much money is immobilized on these 25% of their farms in Brazil. And the first calculation we did, $750 billion are immobilized inside Brazilian farms.
How would an endowment, an insurance company, a US big family office, who wants to go in and get out in 10 years, in 12 years, how would they invest in Brazilian agriculture? How would they do that?
You have two ways of investing in Brazilian ag. One way is equity. Second one is debt. Equity is not so common at this point. Like we see now movements of the large cap companies talking to foreign and local funds for equity participation. medium-sized companies, you don't see this equity investment that much often. It's more on the tech side, so companies that are not producers, only like companies that are, you know, using technology as like as a service or in their product. Then we see more movement. But for producers, we don't see equity participation that often. In our understanding, that's gonna change over the next 5 years. We see movements of like big companies already been talking to funds. So equity is one of the things, but taking minority holdings, and also debt. That's another form of getting to Brazil. We see a few players like insurance companies going there in financing like medium to long term, which is a challenge if you do finance in Brazil, because Brazilian borrowers think short term. And so once they finance long term or medium to long term, they forget that money. So they use the money the first 1 or 2 years. I mean, the ones that are not sophisticated, but they treat that money as, you know, it's old money that they use already.
So in this country, but whenever we go to Europe, I've been to many times to Brussels, you know, to participate in different meetings. You know, they point their fingers to Brazil and say, "Oh, you are destroying your environment. You are destroying your forest to produce food." And so we came up with all this information, and everything is, you know, monitored. We have it's a huge, not a big data, it's a big data analysis. So we monitored every farm, and we came up with this information. So first is to show that no one in the world produces more food, fiber, and bioenergy than Brazil, with the preservation, with the protection of the environment that we do. That's the first point. And secondly, yes, I believe that if farmers are providing a fantastic ecological service to the society, not only for the Brazilian society, but the entire world, yeah, they should be paid for. First, genome editing. So, in our opinion, GMOs, genetically modified organisms, are going down because of all the costs involved on launching a transgenic product in the market. And we understand that we will have more and more space for genome edited products. So I'm flying tonight to Johnston, Iowa, to have a meeting with one of our partners, Cortiva, which is a company based here in the U.S. And we have five contracts with them. In two of those, we are focusing on editing the genome of soybean to increase resistance to drought and resistance to soybean rust, which is Brazil. We estimate that we spend around $5 billion on fungicides and other practices to control soybean rust. So genome editing is in the center of our agenda, of our radar. Agriculture 4.0. We are working on drones, on the satellite imaging to monitor our farms, so farmers can have a better way to manage their crops. If you don't need to spray all your field, you're going to spray only on those sites that you see the occurrence of a specific insect damage or a disease. We are using a lot of Internet of Things, IoT. We have a ongoing project with one of our banks in Brazil. So we are using sensors in the soil and the tractors that monitor, the soil in terms of fertilizer, the wind speed, the relative humidity, that sends information, to tractors and to drones, And with all this info, we better idea of what's going on in the field, so we can have a better season, a better harvest.
I'm going to ask one more question, and then I'm going to turn it over to the audience. And this is for Guilherme. Infrastructure. I know that that's a question that's dear to Ted also. Brazil cost, infrastructure, how important is that to you? How can you compete with an infrastructure that's not yet kind of state of the art?
Yeah, I think infrastructure is one of the big points in Brazil that most influence the profit of the farmers. A lot of things has been done, improved already, and I think it's going to change our margins for sure in the next 5 years. It's already changing. If you see, let's say about the general farmers, soybean and corn in the central west of the country, the ports of the north today in the Amazon River, they have excess of capacity today. There are more ports than goods. So today the margin of these companies in the north are very tight because there's a competition for the products. Too many ports was built. I think the next step now is the rails. I think this what I'm talking with people who is related to this subject. I think it's going to be fast. The privatization of the rails to the north and to east-west also. I think maybe 1 year or two, the companies will win the auction, will start to build this. And in terms of impact on the profit, in some regions it can be tremendous. For farmers who make soybean and corn, the margin is about $300, $400 per year. In a good year, 500, but normally it's $300 per year, per hectare. If these farmers produce about 10 tons per hectare between soybean and corn, and the impact of the logistics could be, some people say 50, but I'd say $30 per ton. So $30 per ton times 10 is $300 per hectare. So in some regions can double your profit.
I want to give a round of applause.